Returning from lunch, I find speaking to be therapeutic. I was in Wellington, New Zealand a few months ago, and I was feeling like I had the flu, but I had to speak that night at a meetup. I don't like letting people down, but I was feeling like I was coming down with the flu, so I thought maybe I'll just speak and then I'll go back to the hotel and lie down. And I started talking, and then by the end of my talk, I felt great. I now have a working theory that public speaking, cures the flu. So I'm going to test that next time I feel really sick. So I want to talk now about what should I do now. This is a talk that I was asked to create by a client in Stockholm about 6 weeks ago. So she said, first she told me, well, we need to know how to prioritize our tests. And then I asked her, well, what exactly, so you mean like how to understand risk? And she's like, not really, it's more like, what should people be working on right now? So it's not just testing. Well, it's not just testing. So it turned into, as I questioned my client, it went from how to prioritize tests to how do you decide for yourself as a tester or as any kind of technical professional, what should you do right now on your project? Which is an interesting topic. And I accept the challenge. The night before I was to give this talk for the first time, I had dinner with a Russian tester working in Sweden named Liza Vinsky, and she was telling me this story of this difficult testing situation that she was in. And I realized that the story is the perfect way to deal with this question. What should I do now? So here's the story. Here's Liza's story. She's a test manager at a telecommunications company, and one day she's surprised the vendor of the big product that she tests notifies the company, oh, we've made a big change, just test it, okay? And she wasn't ready to test it, she didn't have staff to test it. So she said, the first thing she told me is, I refuse to just test it. I refuse to do, because it's just complicated. It has to be thought out. You can't just test it. Just go tester and test it. So we have to go through the process. We got to start the process. But she was so upset that she couldn't think. So her first step was to call her husband, who has, as all good husbands have, the ability to listen to his wife and calm her down. I do that with my wife. She does that with me. I recently called my wife from Switzerland and said, I feel depressed. She talked to me. Somehow I felt tremendously way better an hour later. That's what we do for each other. I've been married 24 years, so we have this down now. We understand. Did some actual testing, and then when I met with her, was on a Sunday, I guess, and that Monday she was going to actually do the test event, but it hadn't happened yet. So this is where the story ended. Later on, she told me that the test event went really well, and they found lots of bugs, and people had fun at the testing event. She was feeling so much better than when she started. So that's an example of a little testing story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'll say more about that later. Now, as far as what you should do now, a lot of people seem to think that there's a secret book of testing wisdom. And that if you only knew about the secret book of testing wisdom, if you only could speak its mysterious language, you would always know what to do. many people come to me. Some testers from Sri Lanka come to me. And they say, what should I do? Now, what's the right thing to do? What's the best thing to do? The thing is that I didn't get the answers that I have by asking anyone else what the best thing is to do. Maybe because I'm a arrogant, strong-minded American, I don't know, but even when I was a young test manager, my bias was always to say, I know what to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. And then later on, I would think, maybe I could have asked somebody for advice. Oh well, too late now. And then I would get advice about how I've screwed everything up and how I could have done better. But my bias is always think it out for myself and then later on talk about it with somebody rather than asking for advice first. I'm an advice later, try it now kind of guy. But now I'm very experienced and lots of people will come to me and ask me all kinds of advice. And it's as if they think that I know the secret book. I know all the right answers. What I try to do for everyone who comes to me, and I encourage you to come to me. I don't ever charge for people come to me over Skype or emailing me and asking me questions. I never charge anybody a dime for that. It's all part of my marketing and it's part of how I learn. When I help you, I get ideas, new ideas for my class, which I go and sell and make a lot of money on. So I'm exploiting all of my free consulting that I give to particular people as a laboratory for developing new stuff for me that will support my family. So don't feel bad if you want to come to me, ask questions. I will always answer. If you email me and I do not answer you, it's because I got busy and your email scrolled down. Just email me again. Just email, say second attempt, and then I'll go, I feel really bad, and then I'll make sure that I answer your email. So people come to me all the time, they ask me this stuff. There's no secret book of wisdom about what the right thing to do in testing. What we do have is the book of reality, which is all around us. And this book is the book I learned from. I watch how problems actually get solved. Now, this is not the book of reality. I just searched on Google for an image search. I said, people working. I just do pictures of people working. Look what it showed me. None of these are pictures of people working. These are all pictures of people pretending to work. These are posing people. Actual people. So I had to look into my own archives and I found this wonderful picture of 3 pairs of testers who are doing actual testing work during an event that I ran years ago at Tate Electronics. They're testing 2-headed radios. They are deep in thought, working. These guys right now are working on putting together a table of different voltage values to try. They're doing what's called brownout testing, to test the recovery of an electronic system after the voltage has been turned down enough to make it fail. Then they turn the voltage up again, and they're busy defining formal tests for that. It's quite fascinating stuff. These are real working people. And by watching real working people, by talking to real working people, by watching myself as I'm doing real work, that's where most of the stuff that I now make a lot of money selling to your companies, that's where it comes from. I didn't gather it by going to the ISTQB or going online and Googling or Wikipedia or any of that stuff. I'm not saying that it's bad to read testing books and all that. I am saying that although I've read lots and lots of testing books, and in the beginning I read every testing book, the first thing I noticed is that this stuff doesn't really work. I try it and it doesn't work. At first I thought it's me, then I thought it's Apple Computer, we're just terrible. And then I thought it's Silicon Valley, we're different. That's why none of the lessons that other people learn work in Silicon Valley. This is the late 80s. And later on I realized, no, it's because the books are all wrong. They're all based on what people wish was the case. It's like a book about how to do testing that starts out about, well, first get magic beans and plant them, and then your testing beanstalk will grow, and then you climb up and you convince the giants to be your users, and then I go like, how come my magic beans never grow? They grow for everyone else, but they don't grow for me. And the truth is that so many books about testing are written, now I know this, they're written by people who didn't experience testing working that way. They fantasized about testing working that way, and they wrote about their fantasy. And now you get to feel bad because your reality doesn't match the fantasy. It's just like some young girl looking at the cover of Vogue magazine and feeling ugly. Right? It's fantasy. It's all made up for the purposes of selling things. Too many testing talks, too many testing books are based on that. So let me start giving you some solid advice. First, stop thinking that there's one specific correct thing that you're supposed to be doing in your test project. There is no such thing as one specific correct thing that everybody knows is the best practice. No, none of my colleagues think that way. Nobody thinks that way. So stop thinking that way. Later today, I'm going to be doing a talk called Questions, which the full name of that talk is Emergency Question Hospital. And it will be it's about a hospital for your questions, where first I'm going to heal your questions that you ask, which many of you have asked in writing, and I have taken those questions in writing. I have healed each of the questions. So whenever you come to me with a question that says, what's the one correct thing I'm supposed to do now? I healed the question by taking that part out and changing it to a better question that doesn't ask for the one right truth. So relax. You didn't miss anything. If you don't know the one correct thing to do in your projects, it's because there is no one correct thing to do. And confusion is not a sin. Confusion is a temporary condition. It can actually be a healthy condition, but it's not an indicator that you are incompetent. So relax a little bit. Here's what I think you should be. There's a three-part solution to the question, what should I do now? Three-part general solution. Instead of looking for the one right thing and memorizing that, I would suggest that you be a cybernetic loop. What is a cybernetic loop? A cybernetic loop is a control system which operates by seeing what's happening and reacting to what's happening, and then repeat. You collect data about the situation, you decide what to do, your system then does what it does, then you see what happens, and then you feed that in, and you keep changing it. So a perfect example of a cybernetic loop is driving a car. When you drive a car, you are constantly looking out the window and adjusting to what's happening. Now, of all nations in the world, you have to be a super cybernetic loop to drive in this nation, because you have to have split-second reflexes. You got to be able to go up on two wheels like a stunt driver. It's amazing how dangerous driving is in this country, and yet I'm amazed at how few car accidents there are. I would have expected there to be like Mad Max every day with cars spinning out and smashing and people jumping from one car to another and all that. And I'm amazed I actually don't see that, even though you come so close to it every day. So a cybernetic loop is a reaction loop. See what's happening and react to it. Now, in addition to that, you can do what's called feed forward, which means you can anticipate. You can see what's about to happen, and you can go, uh-oh, I know what's about to happen, so I can get ready for this right now. Like when you see that that there's a postman walking up to your house, and you know your dog's going to start barking like crazy, so you can take quick action to get the dog under control because you know what's coming next. And the more experience you have in your projects, the more you can say, uh-oh, I know what's going to happen next, when they say things like, the product will definitely ship this Friday, so you can take your vacation to Antarctica on Saturday, no problem, because we are definitely going to ship on July 1st. You know, and it's 6 weeks away, and we are going to make that date. And I hear them say that, and I know what's going to happen next. Someone's vacation is going to get canceled, or someone's going to go on their holiday, and then they're going to get constant phone calls because it turns out we need their crucial information. You've all been, to some degree, experienced, and you learn to see the patterns of what's going to happen next. So we react and we anticipate, but it's a loop. That's the important thing. It's a loop of constantly asking the same questions again and again. Now, part of what you have to do there is you've got to reason about the world. You have to be able to interpret what's going on and react to it, and that requires models. What I mean by a model is something that represents something else. A model is a representation of some kind. A mental model is what I'm mostly talking about, but all these things are models. There's a model airplane, there's a model of environmental model, there's an actual model. Lots of different kinds of models are kind of a representation of human bodies. If you think about it, you can kind of see how they're human-like. Then there's mathematical models here. There's all kinds of models. Now we use models so we can manage the thing that the model is modeling. They're tremendously useful. But what I'm talking about is something that there's no picture of, that you can't have a picture of, a mental model. All testing is based on mental models. You don't test based on the requirements, you test based on your understanding of the requirements. And no one can take a snapshot of your understanding. They can talk to you and they can say, wait a minute, no, it doesn't do that. And then they realize that you didn't understand what they had written. You know, so you can kind of see what people understand by talking and interacting with them, which if you think about it is a testing process. But I can't directly see your mental model. And yet your mental models are the fundamental data object that is the basis of all of your testing decisions. All of them. And all are filtered through your mental model. So, part one of this is be a cybernetic loop. But to be effective as a cybernetic loop, you have to be modeling your environment. Another word for modeling your environment is learning. That's what learning means. Learn about the product means construct a mental model of the product. The two phrases mean exactly the same thing. To construct the mental model of driving a car is to learn how to drive. Or to study people who drive. I guess either one would fit. So modeling cybernetic loops, and the third thing is apply heuristics. Now the other fellow up here was talking about patterns, and he said a pattern is some kind of repeated something. I like that, except for one problem, which is it's only half of what a heuristic is. One part of a heuristic is some kind of pattern of problem solving, sure. And maybe you're going to repeat that, sure. But the other part that goes with that is that it is a fallible pattern. All patterns like that are fallible. They can fail. And we must keep that in mind. What you saw in the second talk is 2 slides that I was very happy to see. both said had the title of limitations. Do you remember that when he said limitations? Most speakers don't put slides like that in their presentation. I deeply admire that. I deeply admire that. I even like how, remember he said, does anyone have any ideas about limitations? I do that too. I call out that too. That's really good. Except you got to watch out because I might be sitting in your audience. So be ready when someone has lots of ideas about limitations, because you got to then fight the tiger. You know, the tiger might come to your talk. So you'll see when I do my class, or anyone who's going to be at my RST class, you'll find out that I will frequently ask people to debate me, to find problems in my, and I'm delighted if you find problems. I'm ready to talk to you all day about it. Because I know that when I talk to you about something you see wrong with my stuff, you're going to feel really good at the end of that. You're going to feel like you were taken seriously, and everything that happens is going to stick in your mind. Heuristics require that you meditate, that you focus on how can this fail. I bought a chainsaw once. I've only bought a chainsaw one time in my life. And when I bought it, the guy I bought it from said, "Have you ever purchased a chainsaw before?" I guess I didn't look like I was, a chainsaw experienced guy. I must have looked like a chainsaw virgin to him. I don't know how you're supposed to look when you're experienced buying a chainsaw, I maybe should have been chewing a cigar or something. I know, I should have been wearing a hockey mask. I didn't come in wearing a hockey mask, so I didn't look like a mask killer. So I buy this chainsaw. He says, "Have you bought a chainsaw before?" "No, I've never. The first time I've ever bought." "How many times in your life do you need to buy a chainsaw?" He said, "I can't sell you a chainsaw. That's dangerous. You've never owned one before? You've never used one?" "No, I haven't. Just sell me the dang chainsaw." "No, I can't do that," he said. "It's too dangerous. You have to watch the video." So he brought out this dusty CD that he blew the dust off of and put it in some old PC, and I had to watch a video that explained all the ways you can die using a chainsaw. Don't do this, don't do that. Like, the spurting blood says, don't do that, So I watched that. So he said, "Okay, you've watched the safety video." Then he said, "Now put on these safety glasses, come out to behind the store, and let's use the chainsaw. Let's practice with the chainsaw." So I did that. And then he said, "Okay, I'll sell it to you now." It was wonderful. What a responsible shopkeeper to make sure that I wasn't going to sue him for recklessly selling me a chainsaw. That's a guy who understands heuristics. He understands that a chainsaw can be useful, but it can also be dangerous. Anything that is powerful is useful and dangerous at the same time. So when vendors or when teachers say, "Here's a cool technique. Oh, I want to tell you all about this technique." And they don't say, "Well, watch out, don't feed it after midnight, don't get it wet." They don't give you the list of curses that it has on it. They're doing you a disservice when that happens. So you've got to ask them, what are the limitations? So I teach a lot about heuristics, and I always try to tell the downside of anything I'm talking about. And if I forget to do that, I hope people will speak up and say, "Doesn't it have this problem?" But that's my three-part solution to the problem of what should I do now, which is be a cybernetic loop, model your world, and you apply heuristics. But so far this is an empty pattern, because what's the content? How do you model the world? What should those heuristics be? So I'm going to offer you some more advice now. Here's my advice I'm going to offer you. All right, so what should I do now to be a good member of a team, to be a good tester, to test the right thing? Let me give you a starting heuristic. This is a heuristic for deciding how to start right now. And my simple advice is try this. Every day, go into work and ask yourself, what's happening now? What is happening now? So this is a way to start your loop. You say, what's happening now? Then the next thing is, what does that mean? And the next thing is, what do I want? And the next thing is there a problem here? If there's a problem here, maybe I should do something to make the problem better. What's happening now? What does it mean? What do I want? Is there a problem? What can I do to make it a little bit better? And you can run your whole life that way. Also, I asked the questions in blue, which is about anticipating. What's about to happen? What kinds of things are about to happen? What could that mean? What will I want? Could there be a problem? And what do I need to do now in order to head off future problems? So I work this loop every day when I am, well, I work the loop every day. But I do have some other heuristics that maybe you don't have access to, which is ask my wife what she wants me to do. You know, that, since my wife runs my company, she keeps track of all my calendar events. So she, on a certain level, it's pretty easy for me just to find out from her when we discuss things and all that sort of thing. But when it comes to the technical work, she can't help me. So I ask myself, what's the status of this technical project? What's going on? Is there a problem? Let me pick a problem, let me solve it a little bit, and then let me ask the question again. And I just go through my whole life, just finding problems and solving them, finding problems and solving them, and anticipating the problems. Now, while I do that, there's a second heuristic for you, a selection heuristic. This is a heuristic that helps you decide from among the various kinds of problems that you might be faced with right now, which one do you work with? And I realized as I was thinking about this that there's a hierarchy of needs that I have in a project. So it's like this. First, self-care. If I am so angry right now that anything I say is going to be a snarling attack on somebody, then what I need to do is take care of myself. If I'm so sad right now, if I'm demotivated right now, I need to take care of myself. If I feel sick, I need to take care of myself. Once I take care of myself, then I can ask the question, do I know what my role is here? If I don't know what my role is, the number one thing I have to do is negotiate my role. Never try to do anything on a test project or on any other kind of project where you don't know what your role is. Now that, by the way, is a heuristic. So when I say never, I don't really mean never. I mean pretty much never. Sort of never. As soon as I say words like never, there's a little process in my mind that immediately starts generating counterexamples. I bet you're like this too. You immediately start thinking, could there be, let's say I don't know what my role is, and maybe one way of discovering my role is to try something. Just try something. Maybe it's so expensive to negotiate my role right now because the person I have to negotiate with isn't available. Maybe they'll be available in a few hours. What will I do till then? Fall asleep? Well, I want to do something. So maybe I don't need to know my role every second. But in general, if you don't know why you're there, find out why you're there is a really good thing to do right now. Third priority. Does anyone need your urgent assistance? Has someone breathlessly showed up to your cubicle, or I know we don't have cubicles anymore, your random patch of flat table that they let you have today? That's what we've evolved to in our society of technocrats. So has anyone showed up to your office chair location and said, please, Obi-Wan Kenobi, help me, you're my only hope. Has a droid come by and played any holograms to you lately? Maybe your urgent assistance is needed. You know, no one ever asked in the first Star Wars movie, did Obi-Wan Kenobi have something else that he had to do that day when Luke just shows up? he pretty quickly drops all of his other projects. He must have had other projects, clients or something that, no, they all got ignored when Luke Skywalker shows up in his life. So, urgent assistance is the third thing. Unblocking is the fourth thing. Even if somebody doesn't need my help, I ask myself, am I blocking someone right now because I'm not finished with something that they need? Maybe I have a piece of equipment and they need that piece of equipment, but they can't have it till I'm done with it. So I have to hurry up and get done with it, and then let it go to the next guy. So I ask myself about blocking. Then I ask myself, did I make a specific promise to somebody? If I did, maybe I have a specific promise to do something today, so I should do that. Then I ask myself, what is my general duty? Given my role, given that I'm a tester, what is my general requirement based on my employment contract? And that way I can generate ideas about what I should do even when I'm not told what to do. Do I need to prepare for something that's coming up? And finally, self-improvement. If there's nothing else, no other reason to do something, then my ultimate background reason is that I'm going to make myself better. Now, I suppose there's a number 9, which is fun. But really, fun, I think fun kind of goes through all of it, and it's sort of secret. Maybe I should add fun as a number 9, but it's the way fun works as deciding to do something. I did it because I wanted to do it because it's fun. It's technically always the lowest priority, but it always tries to sneak up as high as it can get, so that you end up maybe trying to have fun instead of giving someone their urgent assistance that they need. And that's the nature of fun. It tries to insert itself into anything, and maybe that's the way it should be. It's a kind of a secret, floating 9th priority. Now, this was an exercise I did for myself. I hope as you look at this, you're looking at this saying, I knew that, but maybe you had never thought about it explicitly before. Maybe you've never written this hierarchy down before, but I'll bet you know that this is true. And if you disagree with it, then I suspect you have a very similar kind of hierarchy. It might be different than mine, maybe a little bit different, but I'll bet it's similar. And I think this is really how we, experienced people in real projects, actually manage ourselves. Is we have a hierarchy of different kinds of interrupts that we have. And if you're wondering where in here does it say read your test procedure and do that test procedure, then I would say that it could be anywhere, but it is mostly specific promise or general duty. Is if you say I better run that test procedure now. Well, you're running a test procedure because you specifically promised to, or because unless you do it, the developers won't be able to completely finish the thing that they're developing. So you're blocking the developers right now until you say, I've done the regression testing. Or someone has said, I urgently need you to run this test, please help me. Or because it's your general duty to do it. So running a particular test, performing a particular test could ultimately be anywhere on this hierarchy. Now, as part of deciding what to do, you need to be able to analyze your processes, and that's where this thing that I showed you in the last presentation come in, the 4 threads. I developed these years ago when I was working at Borland because I was in charge of defining processes and analyzing processes by which we were doing our work. And I did not want to have just written procedures that I give to people. What I wanted to have were guidelines and ideas and patterns, because I wanted the people on the project to always be in control of their own time. I think if you want the highest, best work, best efficiency, best effectiveness, then you, generally speaking, need to have your technical people in control of their own time. Of course, that doesn't work if you're talking about people who are freshers, right? They're too new. They don't know how to manage their own time. But I'll tell you how to deal with those people. Supervise them. Those people should not be working by themselves. Don't have anyone working by themselves unless one of two things is true. You aren't relying on the quality of their work, so they can do horrible work and you don't care. Like a child with a coloring book. I don't go like, what if he draws outside the lines? You know, oh, we'll be ruined. I don't care. The child can make crown marks all over the place. It doesn't matter. The coloring book is just to give me a few minutes where I don't have to directly interact with my son. So the one condition is you don't rely on the quality of someone's work, and the other condition is if they are competent enough that you can trust them to work by themselves. If someone is not competent enough to work by themselves, then you have to supervise them. Here's what you can't do, and I know a lot of you want to do, maybe a lot of you try to do, but if you look at it carefully, you'll see it doesn't work. And that is, here's someone I don't trust to do the work. They're not skilled enough. So I'll give them a whole bunch of instructions to read and follow. Here's what will happen. They will either not read the instructions, or they will read them badly, or they will read them and follow them badly. But you're not going to get great work by doing that. There's no way to get great work. Here, test it. Just put a child in any car and give them a set of instructions, really good instructions about how to drive, and see how long they live. Just do the experiment. Or maybe you can do it as a thought experiment. Maybe you don't need to do it in real life. So commit, prepare, perform, deliver were threads that I saw in every single technical process that I ever analyzed. And I found that by looking at these things, and I talked about them before, I can ask the question, what is lacking right now? So let's say I'm halfway through this process. I ask myself, do we have a lack of commitment, and is that creating a problem? Do we have a lack of preparation, and is that causing a problem? Like say right now, right here in the project, we realize a real problem is that we're not prepared. And that means that we're being very inefficient in our execution. So what we should do is pay attention to preparation. Let's do some preparation right now, guys. So you move away from performance, which you had been trying to do, and you do some preparation. And maybe part of your preparation is to show your client a little bit about what kind of deliverable they'll get. And they can say, that's not what I wanted, and you can go, oh, we better do some more preparation then. And then you go back to performing. So what I'm saying is every process involves these 4 threads, and what you can say is which of these is lacking right now. And you know it's lacking because you experience certain problems. Commitment is necessary in order to solve the problem, setting expectations and accepting the problem and making time to solve it. Preparation solves the problem of sloppy, slow, and inefficient work. Performance solves the problem that you don't have a solution to the original problem. And delivery solves the problem of putting the solution into practice in a way that satisfies your client. So I also go through the project asking myself, is my commitment level okay? Is my preparation level okay? Etc. So now I can go back to Liza's story and tell you Liza's story with these models in mind. Task manager Liza was surprised by a large unexpected change. Her project was not yet staffed. What she perceived was there was a lack of commitment. She did not have people assigned to that project. So she was going to have to solve the commitment problem. And that's why she refused to just test it. She didn't have the staff to just test it. Then she got angry. And she realized that being this angry, she couldn't function. So she did a self-care move by calling her husband, which is also a kind of preparation. She's preparing herself to do the work. Then she's ready to work the commitment problem again. So she goes to talk to the project lead to discuss expectations. That's all about commitment. And the need to get testers. It's all about committing resources. So there's a self-care element there because she needs to talk to the project lead. She told me when she talked to the project lead, she felt very good because the project lead agreed with her that they should have told them they were working on these changes before they just sprung them on them. So she felt supported, and that allowed her to get even more centered and to feel more effective and ready to do positive things. So she emails the developer to get details. Now that's a preparation movement. It's also part of her general duty as a test manager. She's following her general duty. She conferred with experts. She goes to this meeting. This is interesting that the meeting that she went to was not called by her. It was called by someone else, and she had promised to go to the meeting. So she was following a specific promise. She was rendering urgent assistance to the project leader at that point. She also had a general duty to be at the meeting. She also needed to do it for preparation. She also needed to do it for solving the commitment problem. So lots of things came together for her to be at that meeting. And so forth. Every one of the things that Liza did, you can look at with a certain lens, certain goggles. You can look at it in terms of the different hierarchy of things we're trying to do, of trying to solve these generic problems related to technical work. And you can be a cybernetic loop. Liza had a model in her mind that I think looked like this. What she mostly did was gather knowledge about the product, study the potential risks, record and organize test ideas, which is a model that looks like this to me when I pull it out of my head and I make a picture of it. She's thinking about her test activities, she's thinking about her risks, she's trying to record ideas about test activities and risks and bring them together. She's trying to understand the product and the requirements. She's working all these angles. So, let me answer the basic question now in as close to one sentence as I can. What should I do now? Don't look for the book of mystical, secret right answers. There's nothing to be found in such a book, and such a book does not exist. Ask yourself what's happening now. Understand your role. Understand the problems you face, and react, and anticipate the problems coming up. When you can do that, you will be comfortable walking into any situation, and you know that every day, even though you don't know what you're going to do that day necessarily, you know that as soon as you walk in the door and just look around and talk to, say a few words to a few people, look at some boards on the wall and some cards on the wall, you will quickly see what makes sense to do right now in the project. That's my answer to that question. Thank you for listening. I think I'm out of time, right? Am I out of time? Have I burned all my last minute?
Yes, this is your exactly last minute.
This is my exactly last minute, so I'm exactly... I usually like to argue with people and ask for questions, but she gave me so little time today that I only have, like, it comes right to the end. But, of course, you know, you can yell at me or whatever during, because I will yell at you. during breaks or what have you, and ask me any questions that you have. All right, so